Welcome to the Refrigeration Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Matthews, and we're doing another morning coffee with Trevor and Andrew. It's Saturday morning, early for Andrew, 6 a.m. This guy's a champ, but it's always good to have a conversation, learn a little bit about what's going on in the industry. I think we dove in last time on one of his calls where he had a rack down, no gas in it, which is like one of the calls it's a tough call, especially if you're new. That one's a really tough call. Nothing working, rack is down, and it's flat, absolutely flat. So that's a really tough call because it takes a while to find the leak and fix the leak and get the gas. But we're going to dive into a little bit about professional development because this is something important. Me and Andrew talk about this all the time, which is very important to us. We are professionals as technicians out there. We are the reps and the brands of the ourselves as well as the company. We're representing ourselves, but we're also representing the company that we work for. And that means something. You know what I mean? You want to be out there every day doing your best you know what I mean? Serving your customer, serving yourself, trying to get to that next level. I had a conversation. I got a course coming up, a CO2 course with 15 technicians. And I call the technicians, I want to always get to know the technicians to find out about them. And some are a couple of years in, some are 15, 20 years in. And one of the big thing is, especially the senior techs and the older, they want to be professional. They want their teams to be professional, when they're out there and working. And it's very, very important that we act professional out there. And I think we'll start off with some of the tools that I use, and I get really, I got better and better at it over the years, is really time management. And what's that, like a professional development tool? Why is time management important? Well, time management is super important because this really helps you, develop your week, for an example. And I know things can get thrown in. Like this week, your week was crazy. You told me, you know what I mean? You had tons and tons of calls, but time management is in the sense that, okay, I got these certain calls this week. I got to schedule other things around. Sometimes you get family stuff that you have to do. Sometimes you got personal stuff you have to do. Plus you got to get your work stuff in, health stuff like the gym. What are some of the things that you do, Andrew, to really help your time management and develop, make sure you protect your time as well?
A schedule.
Yeah.
I scheduling is probably the biggest thing that I use. It's on my phone, right? So as far as maintaining where I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to do, that schedule goes a long way. But that's really what helps me, I guess, from my day to day, my hours, what I do. If I don't have that, it's kind of like a free for all. You don't have any, I guess, management of your own time. So then you're kind of reacting instead of being proactive about it. So once you get, I mean, when I first started out, I don't think I was terribly that busy, like answering phone calls and talking to customers that way. But there was the aspect of, okay, I got this call, I've done this call, I'm trying to learn this. So there's a lot, I guess it kind of flips what your priorities, I guess, would be as you progress in this field.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to understand as you get more experience and you become a senior tech or a lead tech, you start to take those calls from apprentices. And I'm doing a course right now for a contractor, a course where we're talking, hey, what's up, my man? Where we're talking about they are taking a lot of the calls from the technicians, the apprentices, but they're like, Trevor, like today I took 25 calls and I couldn't really do the jobs that I needed to. It really took away from the job that I needed to do. So time management is really, really important there because knowing that, okay, if I do need to take these calls, how do I be effective really to help the person? Don't let them feel that we're not helping them, but also get my job done. How do you manage that?
Perfect question. I get actually I've thought about this question quite often because this isn't the first time I've heard about this where I've been so busy I can't even get my own stuff and I got, everyone else calling me. First off is making sure that you set your group or your technicians or your whoever you're working with with a success plate. So on that plate, a checklist. Have them have a checklist of from point A to point Z of what you should already have when you call. Probably a lot of those calls are just kind of like getting the ball rolling for them as far as, hey, what's superheat? Oh, I don't know. Let me check that. And then it's click, right? So having that checklist of just the basic items for that service call, where you at, what you're doing, amp draws if it's something to do with that, so a checklist is really going to help your team grow that much faster. And now they'll have these answers when you call. Because what I noticed with newer techs, before I was giving this checklist out, I would get calls kind of like that. Well, what's your pressures? Well, I haven't even hooked up yet. I'm like, well, here's the deal. Get this checklist, and then this is going to help you, and you're going to figure out a lot more stuff with this checklist.
Yeah.
And then once you get stuck, call me.
Yeah.
So it's really helping your team out with these checklists.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing that we as technicians need to understand. You can get frustrated, you know what I mean? But that's not helping the problem. Hanging up on them is not helping the problem. That's just making them frustrated, and they don't know what to do sometimes. And sometimes the new person, they're not learning. I hear this, they just don't learn. The new generation don't learn. Well, maybe they need to be taught a different way. Maybe they need to be taught different than it was before. So that checklist, maybe inside that checklist, because nowadays it's really easy to develop this stuff. I use AI all the time. I've got an AI platform and stuff where you can go in and you can start building your own checklist. So just say it's checking superheat. Well, maybe it says checking superheat, and they click on it and it says, okay, you put your gauge here and your temperature probes here. You know what I mean? So at the outlet of the evaporator, you're going to see an access fitting and have a little picture there. You know what I mean? So if the standard cases and then the temperature probe, and this is a visual look. I do this all the time in my training courses when we're there showing them, okay, we're going through a checklist. Well, how do I check evaporator superheat and then compressor superheat and then discharge superheat? You know what I mean? And actually show them physical pictures. So go through this checklist that is, you got pictures here plus how to do it, explanation of when you get this, then call me back. Will it take longer? For sure. But then that saves you time as that senior tech. So when they do call you or they text you that list, you can quickly look at it instead of spending 25 minutes and like, okay, you got to take your gauges. You got to go over to the case. You got to pull the panel. If you can pre-do this stuff. And I've done this in lots of my courses and people that I work with, which saves you time.
Yeah, I can't agree anymore. I mean, that's the checklist when I was coming through the fields and coming through the ropes, I guess you could say, is that when I would call and ask for help, I started writing the questions, what they were asking me down. And then what I would do is, so next time I would call them, I already have that answer for them. So then we would just knock the questions out, right? So it just made my life a lot easier. And I think the frustration you could tell like over the phone because they're busy. We're all busy in this trade. I mean, there's not a lack of that, but whatever we can do to help us grow and be more efficient. I think I can't stress enough how much that checklist really does help.
Yeah, I think so too. Eric, my man, definitely that will help you as a senior technician, right? Because like I told that technician in the group, I was like, man, 25 calls in a day, you can't really get your work done. And then the business is relying on you as a senior tech or a lead technician to help the customers make the business money, because as a senior technician, your gross profit and your profit margin are a lot higher than an apprentice. And some people are like, well, no, they charge apprentices out at a journeyman rate, but that's not profitable. Like if they're doing a job that's a 2-hour job and it takes them 6 or 7 hours, it's not profitable for the business. There's other jobs that need to get done, and that's where backlogs that's why they rely on you as a senior technician to solve the harder problems and get the jobs done in the right amount of time. And when we were chatting about it and talking about just like these ideas, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try that. And this is planning and preparing. Usually, the people that are the technicians that are going to call you. You know your team. You know who's new. It's not like it's just you're getting random calls from technicians from different companies and all over the place. Well, maybe you do, some people out there do, but usually the people in your company, right, and in your zone that you're working with that's potentially going to call you. So, and maybe it's doing that, like we're talking about time management. Maybe it's you starting like a kind of like a group chat with your team, or maybe the potential that's people that are going to call you and each week mentor these technicians. And some people are like, oh, this is not my job. I don't need to do that. That'll make your job easier. You send out a checklist. Oh, hey, this week, this is a new tip. Here's a checklist for the winter maintenance or the summer maintenance. This is what I do, or take a quick video and send it to all of them. This will save you time as a senior technician, because now you're training and developing, because we all need to train and develop. And this is what I do daily basis, but the more we train each other, the easier it gets for everybody.
Yeah, and then when you get so I do the group chat thing too. I just think it's a great way for all of us to communicate, because as everybody else in this trade, we're on the road basically, right? We're driving from one job to the next, so we don't really communicate with the team or your coworkers unless there's a phone call. But I use that for learning purposes too. I go. It might be some sort of little training thing. The latest one was how to properly clean a air handler evaporator, where you have to split the coils up because they're double layered. So something simple like that. Some of these guys, they're so new to the trade, they don't even know that you could split the coil a little bit to get even clean the condenser. Yeah. So it's just those little tips and tricks, and then you come across something, you're like, oh guys, check this thing out. This is unique too. So it's just bringing the team together and helping you guys out, and the communication piece is huge. And that's where I think where there's a lot less of it, especially because when we get dispatched from home, and I know that's really where we're at now. We don't go to the shop, huddle, talk, and then go out and talk shop. So I think there's a lot of that missing nowadays.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because like yesterday when I was calling all these technicians in the CO2 program, and I was chatting with one, like I asked them, like, do you work out of your truck or do you go into the shop? And like, I think the first 5 techs I talked to, they work out of their trucks or out of their houses, right? So they don't go into the shop. They're hours away from the shop. So it's like, how do you build that relationship? And it's not as easy as it is before, where you'd go in, you'd meet, you have a coffee in the morning before you would go out to the site, and have a chat or just get to see some face-to-face time. We're more alone now. But that communication skills, and this is why when we do these private programs, is pretty good, like for some companies, because there's like a bunch of provinces sometimes, or a bunch of different cities, or a bunch of different states when they come in, and then they get to see the technician for the first time. You know what I mean? Like they work and they talked on the phone for maybe a year or two, and you know what I mean? And it's maybe not that long, but it's one of the first times they get to see the other technician. And I think having the communication skills, or working together and having that open communication, goes a long way, because this is where you can have a technical talk. You know what I mean? Oh man, I was running into this issue at this store. We both work at the store, but we never see each other. You know what I mean? At that store, like you'll get a call there, you'll go do it. I'll get a call there, we'll go do it. And maybe the two of us own that store, and we've got to try to work together to make that store the best maintained as possible. You got to work together in that sense. And then when you change stuff, it's about the open communication. You gotta work at that stuff, and then work to the customers too, because I think this is another hard thing in the industry, is that you have multiple people, even from your own company, working at the same store. When you're talking to the management or the owners, you guys got to talk together too, because you got to be working together to help that end user. Have you ever come across that, where 2 different people are talking to the management of that store, the manager or the retailer, and then all of a sudden it's 2 different stories?
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens all the time. And that's what I mean with that miscommunication that techs have, especially when you go there. My mind's always thinking, who else has been on this? What else has been said? You like some of the depending on the your software that you use for your billing purposes or whatever, you could actually go back and read the history, and you know that, Bob was here 2 days ago, and it sounds like it's probably or maybe the same thing. So I mean, calls like that happen all the time too. But one thing that you gotta make sure you're not doing is throwing anybody. Always try to protect your team, right? You don't want to get two conflicting stories. Well, it's like, well, he doesn't know what he's doing. This is actually what it is. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You got to see where they're at and see what's going on, because you weren't there. So a lot of mishaps, I guess, and communication pieces towards the manager or the owner is missed because we're running from call to call to call. So it's important to get that team, like I said, together, talk about it, whoever was at that job, if it was, and make sure because you don't want them to you don't want them to lose trust in that other tech that you got going on, because we can't do it all. I'm telling you right now, we can't do it all. So we rely on other people.
Yeah. And you can do many different ways to get the same result in refrigeration. And I like what you said there. You weren't there at the time. You don't know what was happening. So it doesn't mean they were on the doing it wrong or not. You know what I mean? But it's what we need to do is kind of look at the bigger picture, right? Because at that time something could have been happening, and then now when you get here, it's something different happening, and it could be totally different. But that situation, those situations happen all the time. I hear it.
Exactly. And I guarantee that individual is doing the best that he probably can to fix it, to say it. And sometimes we all need coaches. I mean, I do personal development. I do professional individual development. I mean, I'm always trying to learn, always trying to be better at who I am. It doesn't just end because it's 5:00. I mean, I think it's important.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this today. That's why we have the Refrigeration Mentor community, the hub. That's why people come in here and learn and grow. And it's important. It's not only for the technical side, because a lot of this stuff that we do, the technical side is not as hard as a lot of us, like the way I used to make it out to be. I used to think the technical side was the real hard, but it's actually dealing with the customers, dealing with management, understanding time management, understanding stress management's another one, you know what I mean? Because we can get a lot of stuff built up, kind of like we talked about that call last time. When you get there and it's racked down, like it's a stressful situation, and it takes years of experience to be like, okay, it is stressful. My goal here is to figure out the problem. It's a leak. I'm going to fix that leak, and then we got to properly charge, get it back up and running. And what's those steps? And the technical side steps. But I think the big side is that communication piece, talking with the other techs, talking with the management, talking with the retailers or that customer. And it takes experience. And we're not taught this stuff. You don't get taught this stuff really in school. You know what I mean? Like even coming up, like there's not really much on the communication skills. It's like, okay, well, you went to school, so you're social and you should learn this. But that's just not the way it is. It's practice, doing it. And I think it gets easier the more you do it. But if you don't have anyone coaching you or talking to you about or giving you advice on it, you don't know if you're getting better or not. And that's the big thing, you know what I mean? Like I had this conversation with this customer, and how do you think it went? Like role playing. I do that in lots of different programs as well. Have them. I asked them, like, what was that conversation like with that retailer? And how did it feel? You know what I mean? How do you feel the conversation go? And what did you actually say? What was the words that you used? Because language matters. Because we do a customer service training that we built, me and Julia built, and Julia built it, honestly. She built it, but it's all about that why language. One of the whole modules, language matters. So what you say to your dispatch, what you say to your manager, what you say to your spouse, what you say to your kids, what you say to your coworkers, that means stuff, right? So reflecting on that, and that's where you need coaches. Like honestly, I couldn't talk the way I do now if I didn't practice for the last 10, 12 years. I couldn't write an email 15 years ago as a technician. I couldn't write an email. It took me 2 or 3 hours. It still takes me a long time to write an email now, but it used to take me forever as a technician because I just didn't do it. Now I've been practicing 15 years. I'm getting better, but it still takes me a while. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well,
There was a lot there.
yeah. Hold on. No. I mean, yeah, I agree. As far as going with the customers and that communication skills, it goes beyond just like talking to. It's demeanor, how you hold yourself up, your confidence, right? So all that plays into talking to a customer. If you kind of go in and you just head down and kind of like, well, maybe this or maybe that, that could be an issue too. And that customer that's paying, you to be there, they want to know that you know what you're doing. So a lot of the times is, especially when you're new out there, you just haven't built that confidence yet, and that shows when you talk to the customer too. So I've had that conversation with the new technicians in the field, where the store manager would actually call me and it says, "Does this guy know what he's doing?" And I'm like, and I go, "Yeah, I was coaching him over the phone. I got him going, but he's telling me that yes, that he knows what he's doing." So building that confidence. Also, before you even get into the store, I think this is important too. I don't know why, but I don't like parking right up front at the grocery store. I always park way in the back, because I like to leave those spots for the customer. So just being courteous like that goes a long way too. I most likely you're probably not going to get commented like, "Oh, thanks for parking," in the back far out. But there is times where the manager's coming back from lunch per se and notice that you're way out in the back versus right up front because there is a spot. Huge. Sure. Making sure that at least when you first start out, you have a fresh shirt, fresh pants, no holes, nothing raggedy. I think that's super important to show visually that you're ready for work. You look professional. And that's before you even talk to the customer. He's already looking at this, or whoever it is, already looking at you when you walk in that door. So yeah.
And I think that's huge too. You know what I mean? Just that professional demeanor. And once again, we're trained, and like we go to trade schools, and it's all about, most of it is about, the technical side. How do you braze? How do you pipe? How do you wire? How do you do it electrical? And a lot of it, well, we deal with the people. You know what I mean? We're dealing with the people. And being clear and talking about how you were safe up there, and bring safety issues up to the attention of that customer. But getting back to it, that language that you're using to them is so important. You want to be professional about it and have that, like you said, professional image, because it's not only you're representing the company you work for, it's you're your brand, right? And they're going to remember that. They're going to remember that. And they're going to, hopefully, the more you do it, and like you said, they might not say thank you. They might not notice you when your van is parked out back, but they'll notice when your van's parked out front. So that's, you know what I mean? So it's like, and just, I like that on those just little tips like that, because it goes a long way. Somebody notices. Somebody always notices when you're doing something right. You may not notice, they might not be saying thank you, but they're noticing it, which is important. And at the end of the day, you want to keep that professional image, for sure.
Yeah, and to piggyback, I guess, or keep going with that conversation that I just popped in my mind, is when you're on the job site and you're working, make sure you clean up everything. Even if you leave water, or you accidentally left water, or whatever happened, there's water on the ground, go grab that mop and mop it. It's right in the back of the store. Like, it only takes 5 minutes maybe to go back and clean up the whole entire area. Don't just leave it, because again, that safety wise, we got to think safety as well, not just for yourself, but everybody around us. So that's customers, and that's that their employees as well.
That's huge. And I've seen this online before, and I read lots of group chats, like different platforms, and like I've seen people. It's not my job. They're not paying me to clean up after myself. I don't need to pull. It's not my job to pull product. It's not my job to pick the compressor up off the roof because it's their compressor, and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you want to go above and beyond, um, to show that, to bring that value to yourself, your customer, and your company. And the more you do that, honestly, people notice this stuff. People notice everything that we do. You may not think it. And then I see pictures of rack rooms. And I remember pushing doors trying to get into rack rooms before. Like the customer didn't, they just use it as a stocking room. But you got to talk to them about that. And then don't get in the habit of doing that. You know what I mean? Oh, well, the customer doesn't care about their stuff because I see this too. They don't care about their stuff. So why should I care about their stuff? That's not the way to roll. You should care anyway. You should care. And then I hear this too. Oh, I care about their product more than they do. Sure, that's fine then. Just keep being professional and doing your job to the best of your ability. Because maybe they don't, but the next 17 customers you work with do. You know, and that's where it comes back to that professionalism.
Yeah, holding yourself to a higher, I guess, standard is huge. And to be honest, I don't know. I've seen this time too, where we're on online where people will walk up to the rooftop or walk into the machine room and it's dirty. Who are they going to blame right away? The techs or whoever company that's already there. Like this shouldn't happen. Leaks, oil on the ground. I mean, that's all taken care of. I guess the store, that's your store. You own that store. So a little bit goes a long ways as far as making it better every time that you get there. That's kind of what I try to do. I know, I mean, we're all busy. I totally understand it. But if you're there and you're checking superheats or whatever system superheats, um, you're already there. Just wipe up all that oil. And that's where it's what I don't really understand is why, because I come across that all the time where there's oil and it was from an old leak, I'm like, well, why didn't we clean that up? Because not when I see that, I go, oh man, there's a leak right here. Then you get the leak detector out and bubbles. You're like, what? That's kind of weird. So I don't know. That's something that I'm coaching my team on, is if there's a leak or oil, any oil, clean it. Because like I said, that's a visual thing. And if I see it, I'm like, oh man, there's a leak here.
Yeah. And that's our job. That's what we're paid for, and that's why we get paid really well, and sometimes it is adjusting the bumper, sometimes it is getting down and putting the kick plate back on. Like just because you're a journeyman and you've been doing it for a long, long time and, oh, that's an apprentice job. We got to be professional and be accountable. And this is where it's like owning, if you can, owning your own stores that's what I like. Like when I own like this was my store, I had to deal with this one or two stores. Like I was trying to crush it. I wanted that store to be the best running store out of all of them, even if it's an old 30-year-old store they don't feel like they care about it. You don't feel like they care about it. They don't care about maintenance. I still did the best, went above and beyond, as much as possible. You know what I mean? Because you can't be going out and doing 8 hours of work and not getting paid for it. You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense. But you can take 15 minutes and pick some garbage up that somebody left there, like all the wire stripped on there, or putting a couple of tie straps on that are like 2 cents. You know what I mean? And cleaning it up each time you go, which is, I think, is super, super important.
Yeah, a little bit every time will eventually be a big thing over time. Awesome. So yeah, no, like I said, I'm a fan of making things a little bit better every time I go, because there is old stores out there, and when what I've also struggled with older stores, like you said, maybe it's a new account, or maybe you guys had it for a while. It doesn't matter, but if you walk in and it looks like like it's not really cared for, then a lot of other people, well, if they don't really care, like you said, Trevor, then why would I care? But then that piles and piles and piles. So now that thing even's worse. And that's where I think us as techs, as mindsets, we should probably get that even better.
Yeah.
Especially because as time goes on, these racks are gonna get older and older and older.
Yeah.
So
how's the coffee anyway, Andrew? this morning?
Well, I'm empty now, so it was pretty good.
This is what happened. We talked a little bit about professional development there, but let's dive into some technical stuff now because
Let's do it.
it's important to do that. I know we had a couple of conversations this week. You had an issue where all the Ethernet wasn't running, so you had a problem on one that. You want to talk a little bit about that? I think it was on an E2. Was it an E2?
Yeah, it was an Einstein 2 call. Trader Joe's calls and said we lost communications. I'm like, all right, well, I'm only 7 minutes down the road. Let me come by and see what's going on. So I get there and went to check the alarm, and I lost communications. And first I thought because normally when I see communication, it's like a board. I lost the board, transformers out. Typically that's what I see when I lose. There was one time where there was water actually got onto the board and short the board out. So I lost communication on that board. But this one was unique. I never came across this. I'm like, man, I have my rack is telling me everything that I'm doing, but I don't understand where the loss of Ethernet is going on. So I started doing some research on that, and as I was reading possible causes, it says something about an IP address being duplicated. I go, well, that's not it, because this thing's been running for 10 years. I go, so it can't be that. So I started trying to wrap my brain about what's going on. But I had a conversation with the manager. That was a total game changer. So I was talking to him, and I was like, did you guys happen to have somebody in here about 8 o'clock last night because that's when I go and read the alarm logs on the E2. And that's when we started pinging on this lost communication call.
Yeah.
It was about 8:30, 8:45, something like that. He goes, actually, yeah, I did. I go, we actually had whatever company come out and install, and he pointed up on the roof there. And I think it was just a Wi-Fi adapter or something. I don't know. I just there it is. I go, we got two IP address named the exact same. And what they're doing is they're trying to communicate, but they're getting conflict.
Yeah.
So that's how I was able to figure that out, by having that conversation with the manager. Because other than that, like I said, this thing's been running 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden I got an IP address that's duplicated. That doesn't make any sense. So it's just that conversation with the customer, and that's how I was able to solve that.
Yeah. And I think controls is one of the things that I'm talking to more and more people about. I'm training more and more people on controls. I got a webinar coming up with my good friend Kevin Millis from the UK this week, a 4-part series where we're going to be diving into tons of different basic navigation, analog inputs, digital inputs and outputs, things like that. And I've been building and working on controls training for a while. What are some of the tips that you usually give to your team on controls? Because now you're EMS now. You work towards this, and congratulations on that too, Andrew. Is because you told me last year or the year before, it's like, this is where I want to work towards. I want to get to be EMS. I want to work on controls more. I've been doing this for 18, 20 years, and I know controls and I learned it, but I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I'm just out there putting fires out. What are some of the things that you talk about with your team and with the apprentices coming up about controls?
Well, controls, that's the basics is where I basically start with them on controls.
Yeah.
That could be from a pressure transducer to a temperature sensor to programming, or actually just reading the boards. That's probably where I really start with especially new guys or new technicians coming out in the trade. Is here's the board. This is where everything's going to go, and we're going to see more and more as time goes on. So it's really important to read what this is. And so I just go in and just show them how to either read the board number per se, and what is it? Is it input? Is it an output? Just super basics. But the one thing that I would say from, jumping into the EMS side, that I did not realize when I was just servicing, and like you said, putting the fires out, attention to detail. It is huge. And the simple minor thing could be the whole reason why it's not communicating, not working. And that could be as simple as a little tiny dip switch on one, or you have the wires where it's just because polarity sensitive, so you got it reversed. Something that simple could cause the whole system or that whole unit or whatever you're working on not to work. Having a good multimeter too is huge, because you're working with kind of low voltage, 2.5 volts DC, from communicating from the board. So having a fairly decent multimeter, I think, is key too to understanding what is going on.
Yeah, and I think it's not even new people into the industry. People that have been doing it for a long time. Like I was mentioned earlier, I do lots of CO2 trainings, and one of the things, like, they're good on the mechanical side. They've been doing it for 8, 10, 12 years, but they didn't really spend a lot of time, once again, on the control side. So diving into, okay, looking at the sequence of operation. How do I really find the sequence of operation of actually something happens to that outcome? And then getting in to understand, like I was doing a training maybe 2 weeks ago about flex combiners. So on the Copeland, well, it's an Emerson, now Copeland E2 or CPC, but like, how do I read flex combiners? Like today, you can learn how to read flex combiners a lot easier than ever before, by going in and using AI to troubleshoot it. I do this all the time. Like, if I don't understand what's going on, is that you can take it and you can say, okay, here's all my descriptions of all the analog inputs, outputs, and you put that all in. And then here's the flex. This equals that if this happens to that. And then it'll spit out and kind of give you an idea. It's not perfect all the time, but it gives you an idea. For me, I'm like, holy smokes, that makes sense. So when this happens, it triggers this solenoid for 5 seconds. And then when this happens, it closes for 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Or it opens it for 10 and closes it for 20. It all depends on that design. But understanding what to look for goes back to that navigation and spending time on it. I think that's the biggest thing, is taking that 15 minutes instead of going and have a coffee or on Instagram or social media and stuff. Go on that controller. If you don't know the microthermal, if you don't know the Danfoss, you don't know the E2 or E3, spend a little bit of extra time. How do you kind of develop your skills on these different controllers?
What you just said is basically what I do. When there is a call that I'm going to get, and it's not like I have to be there right now, I do the research, right? I'm sitting at home drinking a cup of coffee, but I'm reading a PDF on a multi-flex combiner or whatever it may be, what I'm working or going to work on. So last week I had a Danfoss 355 that I'm swapping out and going to an 880. To be honest, I never done that. In service wise, when I wasn't the EMS guy, I never had to do that. It was a board point maybe, or a sensors, adding a sensor. Those are the stuff as a service tech, as I guess that's what I would do. Now I'm taking this controller, tossing it out, I'm putting a new one in. Well, how do I get what that was doing into this one? So a lot of that time, that's me taking the time, building myself, understanding what I need to do, coming up with a game plan, and then tackling it. So that also connections. Sometimes you get to a point where you don't know what to do anymore. You tried, everything that you could think of. You're not reading the PDF or whatever, and you're just like, I don't know. So that's when you bust out your phone and call somebody that's either probably has done it, or so building connections is huge in this industry too. When you get into a situation like that, at least for me. But so far I've been able to tackle and get everything that I can. But that was a fun learning experience, from taking one controller out to another. I've done that with an Einstein 2, swapped down an E2 that was just losing some of its memory. It was crazy.
Yep.
And taking that and dumping the program and making sure everything worked. That's another thing that I would do, is go through the whole entire program after you install that new controller and make sure everything's working. I come across where not everything transfers for some reason, and then you have to either rewrite it or change a set point or something. That's one thing I've definitely noticed from switching controllers out now.
Yeah. I think one of the things that even for me that took a long time to grasp was just even the like inputs versus outputs versus analog versus digital, and because we don't, as technicians, once again in school, we're learning a lot about the mechanical, the TX valves, what a compressor does, like superheat and subcooling. But when you get into the controls, it's really understanding those controls, like analog input, it's the pressure coming back. So that's an input, or the temperature probe, that probe that's out on the suction line or in the airflow, the discharge air or return air. That is an input, an analog input coming back. So it's coming back to tell some information to the brain of that controller, the logic. And then when the outputs for a relay outputs be like, okay, this closes and turns a compressor on, like the staging or a fan, you know what I mean? Like you got an output, it actually closes to make a contact, and then all of a sudden it turns it on. So getting that wrapped around your head took me a while, honestly. It wasn't just come to me. It took over and over again, because we don't do that every day. We're out there, a fan motor breaks, we have a leak, we got to add some gas, coil freezes up, a heater element fails, whatever it is. And it's not always in that. What are some of your thoughts on that? Some of the things that you've learned over the years on like inputs, outputs, and relays, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know what that even means. What is an input? What is an output? Digital, analog, doesn't matter. That's where you need to invest, in yourself, just like you guys are here right now, investing in yourself and learning. And hopefully you guys are picking up something, from this podcast. But yeah, this is where we as technicians learn, is just talking shop right here. And of course on the job too. But
good friend Eric Holland's on the call here now. He's an expert in controls. This guy knows it inside out. So what's up, Eric, my man? What are some tips that you talk about? Because he goes out and he does startups all around the world with contractors and works on controls. But Eric, what are a couple of tips that you give the contractors that you're working with? Throwing Eric on the spot. Well, you can unmute when.
Well, once he gets I don't know if he knows his mic's muted. Oh, there he goes.
There we go. So, come again, Trev?
Yeah. So what are some of the tips you give the contractors? Because you're an expert at, you've been doing controls since we started talking decades, you know what I mean? A long time ago. But what are some tips when you're working with contractors around the world on the control side of it? What are some of the tips that you give them when you're working with them?
Yeah, on the control side, it's always important to get to know your controller, whatever it is. It is at Amazon or it's a Danfoss or whatever it is. Get to know that controller. You don't have to be, hardcore in the controller itself, just as a technician, but you need to be familiar with it. Yeah. You need to find your way around, know what the menu does, where do you find your inputs and outputs, where you find your functions. Just get to know how to read it and how to work with it.
Yeah.
As a not daily user, but as a technician. So it's a little bit above, just reading the numbers, but also know where do the numbers come from.
Yeah.
Right? How is everything is connected, and if you have sub boards or networking or all that stuff, how everything is connected, how do the controllers speak to the other units?
Yeah.
Do you have a system manager on who's in charge or who has priority? All that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good one that you bring up there is the priority level, because me and Andrew were talking about, he was on a site there a few weeks ago, again, maybe, and he was like, I was like, Andrew, why don't you back it up? It's the first thing you do before you start messing around with it is back it up. But he didn't have the access to even back it up. So that the priority level, like you're talking about at that point, is important as well. Have you seen that? Because you're out to startup, so you can get to the priority level. But do you see that coming into play where that's an issue, Eric, where some people don't have the right priority level, or some people have too high of a priority level? Do you ever see that, Eric?
Usually the technicians we work with are pretty skilled, and yeah, okay. Maybe in Europe we're a little bit ahead of you guys in terms of using controllers, electronic controllers. So there's a lot of schooling on it, even from trade schools. So they know what they're doing when they get out, mostly. But getting a too high access level to be able to change too many details, too many settings, I don't think that's a big issue. Of course, you always have those guys who would just, press any key to get something working because they're not familiar with this system. Maybe first time they see this whatever controller, and they're just poking around trying to figure out what's going on. And sometimes people they change stuff that shouldn't really be messed with because it's set from factory for a purpose. Maybe there's some safety limits which are regulated by law, and you don't want to mess with that stuff. But but in order to be a good technician, you should have full access to the system, because in case you can always get into some cases where, okay, I need to do some reprogramming here to make stuff work. Maybe the customer got a new setup. Maybe he added some new rooms or something, or he changed something and changed the load configuration, and you need to make the controller aware of that. So of course you need to be able to change the capacities on the compressors, so the configuration of the compressors. Maybe the customer wants to take one compressor out because he has maybe 25% less load on his system. He shot some cabinet somewhere or rebuild or something, and now we have overcapacity. How do you disable that one compressor? Or maybe is it the right compressor to disable? Do you need to disable instead of the last compressor? Maybe it's number 2 or number 3, because that is a better mix for the whole system. So you need to know how to dig into this controller and operate it, and you need to have some degree of freedom to do that. Yeah. So we don't make too many restraints from this technician. Of course, as Andrew also say, start with the backup. Yeah. Because because you will always get this situation. You will always happen Friday afternoon. It's always a Friday afternoon for some reason, and you're poking around because you need to get that shop working again. And you get that store working again. Everything is getting hot, and you're just poking around to figure out anything. And you may succeed, you may not, but you can always revert to the backup if you fail. So it's not a complete fail. You just sit back.
To where it's at.
But see, where you don't want to be is you put yourself in a situation where you have changed the system in so much that you cannot find your way back again to a working condition. So it's better to have something working 70% than not at all.
No, exactly. And this is important, especially on the control side. It doesn't happen overnight. Like Eric's been doing this for almost 20 years, working on controls. And even me as a technician, I wasn't the startup guy, so I didn't get that opportunity that, the startup guys do. And that's what I recommend. I talk to so many technicians in my CO2 programs or my supermarket program. Got to get out to a startup. Ask ask your manager, ask your brother, is there any time that there's a startup close or where I can go and visit the site and get some of that hands-on commissioning or startup? Because that's where you really learn, because there's nobody coming. We are a startup. You need to start that up. You need to get it up and running. There's no one coming to help you. And it's up to you as that startup commissioning technician. So if you're a tech out there, try to get on that, because that's where all the controls are really happening. And that startup, that's where you got to make sure all the programs are working properly, all the sensors are landed correctly, where, you test stuff. Okay, I tested this relay out and the fan actually turns on, you know what I mean? Or, all this process. And as a technician, we're out there, we're solving hard problems. But sometimes we don't even know how systems work, because you throw up to a call or a rack and you never heard of the manufacturer before, maybe, you know what I mean? You may never seen that manufacturer because there's a lot of new ones coming out. You maybe never worked on a CO2 system before, for an example, or a cascade system. Maybe it's the first time you're strolling to a cascade system and you don't know the sequence yet. And so coming back and getting into these startups and asking the questions to that expert. And honestly, I talk about this all the time. We want to get paid for everything, the work that we do, but this is learning. You know what I mean? I go to meetings and events all the time where I'm not paid. You know what I mean? And going out and getting this training, because that's training you.
That's actually the point. You cannot pay for that training you get just by being there with somebody else. That is invaluable. That's also why I work for a big manufacturing company, producing a bit of racks now and then. And every time we have a new customer, we always offer to come out and assist with the first startup with the first 1, 2, 3 racks he buys. And what we do is, I don't get out to do the commissioning. I never do the commissioning myself, but I train the guys in how to do this.
Yeah.
And we always tell them, okay, but bring everybody. Bring everybody. I don't care if there's 2 people there, there's 5 people there, there are 10 people there.
Yeah.
I don't care, because I'm holding the same speech anyway. So my time is used anyway, and to get as many people into knowing what they're doing with this stuff is the better. And it doesn't need to be the commissioning engineers. The maintenance guys are equally important. Even the pipe fitters are important, because there's a lot of techniques in how to build a good installation.
Yeah.
So all the guys matter in this. Nobody is expendable in this. Everybody who builds the system is important.
Yeah, because I know Andrew for sure. He goes to tons of trainings. He goes to tons of jobs like that. He doesn't get paid for it. He's going there to learn. You know what I mean? And like I said, we want to get paid for all. But if you're going and learning something, just say you have to take 2 days off, personal time off, which you're like, what are you talking about, Trevor? I want to get that 2 days. You could learn more in that 2 days than you learned in the last couple of years. Actually talking with the manufacturer. If it's a manufacturer, talking with those commissioning technicians. That goes a lot longer than the $100 you make that day, or a couple $100 you make that day, or whatever it is, because now you take that with you. You got knowledge where now you can go take harder calls. You're not as stressed out. You're home with your family quicker. That's huge. What's your thoughts on that, Andrew?
Oh, huge. Yeah. I mean, I do it all the time. So it's a no-brainer for me. I mean, that's just investing in yourself. And you said it earlier, which I love, was your name is your brand. I mean, that's how I would want to be looked at, as like, this guy knows what he's doing. He obviously cares. He's putting in the work. He's putting in the time. And that gets shown. That shows in itself, like, this guy's going to be something, I think. But that's just my opinion.
And a lot of companies, honestly, I talk with a lot of them, and not all of them, don't get me wrong. But if you take the initiative as a technician and keep asking, and say, can I get on this job? Learning about other jobs, learning about events coming up. A lot of the times they will give you the time off. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not paid, maybe it is paid, but they'll be like, okay, you can take those days off. Or a lot of times they even pay, because they're looking for someone to go and learn that stuff. Not all the time, but if you don't ask, you don't know. And then I know many times, Andrew, you said you learned about an event coming up, like NSARC in Concord. You said that you're coming out. You already sorted that out. Said I'm going to be there. I made the arrangements already, paid or not paid. You're going because you know what you're going to learn and how you're going to get there. So if anyone are listening, you're out in California near Concord, the NSARC is doing a 2-day natural refrigerant event. We'll be there talking. We're going to do a couple of talks on AI and troubleshooting using AI and how to learn using AI. But Andrew's taking 2 days off, and he's going to go out there a day off and go out and learn. You know what I mean? And you've been to these events before. You know what I mean? So that's investing in yourself. That's so important.
Yeah, and it's the event is free, so that's really nice, except for your time getting there, right? So the event's free. You just got to invest in yourself, and like you said, I've gone to I think three of these now. I'm always picking up something, and not only that, the networking. You get to talk to the manufacturers that are there, and you could bring up calls that you were struggling with the other day or whatever. So I have this situation, and they could actually help guide you. So just bringing that to the table as well is huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the description. So check the description, NSRC event, so you can click on it. Just go and review it. There's a bunch of them around the country this year. I go to try to go as many as I can, and just help the technician. They do such a great job over at the NSARC there. So it's really, really good. And like you said, it's free for technicians, free to learn, networking, and all the time you're learning. So I sit in the same presentation like Rusty Walker. He's their main trainer, their lead trainer, and all the time I'm picking something, same course, same class, but all the time I'll pick something up, you know what I mean? One thing or something that I forgot, you know what I mean? So it's like a good refresher. And this is what I talk about too. And a lot of like I work with some companies all the time, like they hire a refrigeration mentor all the time to do training for supermarket or CO2 or customer service training. And I'm like, you gotta, like, if it's 2 or 3 years, you got to put some of those guys back in for the refresher. That's too long. Like every year there should be a refresher on something. You know, it's not always about learning something new. It's about remember some of the stuff that you used to know, because there's so much to know. There's so much to know. Like there's so much. And I feel like for me, I've been talking compressors for like over 10 years and CO2 over 10 years. And I'm always learning something. Even like, you know, when we start talking about high pressure valves and how they actually work in the function, and when it's placed here versus placed there, like what's the difference? Or like how far you're away, how does that make a difference? You know what I mean? And because I think about that stuff. Or how is there, like Eric said earlier, like how that system's pipe makes a difference. Like it makes a huge difference if it's piped one way versus the other way. So just learning these little tips and tricks. And when you go to events like that, meeting people, you learn so much. So much. Awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's so valuable just to invest that in that little time. If that's even all you do, even here, I'm sure. Hopefully, some people picked up some stuff. There was one thing that I wanted to say about the EMS stuff is double checking the inputs. Making sure they are reading what they are reading. I don't know how many times I've come across where I get on the computer, everything looks fine computer-wise, but my case isn't running, right? I go, well, it's doing what it's told, so let's go figure out why. And it could be just a temp sensor being 5 degrees off, and that's the whole reason why that pressure transducer, instead of reading, well, it thinks that it's reading, you know, the correct pressure, but there could be some oil trapped in it and is buffering, and that could be a 200-pound difference just because of that oil. There's a story behind that one. So, like, yeah,
I know we talked about that one, and that's a good point. Like, and I know maybe Eric's seen this before too, but Andrew had a CO2 rack where the flash gas bypass, the flash tank pressure transducer was full of oil and trapped 800 psi in there. And really at 800 psi flash tank here, on that one, I think it was a 45 bar design, which is 650 psi. That relief should have been blowing.
Yep.
But was it an E2? Yeah, an E2 was saying it was running at 550 or 515. Like it was just, but the rack was running every compressor was running real hard. And then you were like, this doesn't make sense because you had an apprentice check the pressure. Is that right? You had an apprentice put the gauge on and actually verify the pressure. Is that what happened? Why don't you dive into the story a little bit?
Yeah, it was I'm just there just to do rack maintenance and just double check things. So I wasn't really there to do anything. But I noticed it was kind of loud for what it was. Because just, from normal, what I would say. And I go, man, something's weird. But I took the apprentice and I showed him what we have, and I was like, is there any questions? So I just kind of ran through the whole system there. It was an LMP rack. And it's like, okay, all I want to do for what I want you to do is let's verify that the pressures are right. And I already told him ahead of time the pressures. I think it was right around 500. I don't remember the exact pressure, but he hooked up the transcritical CO2 gauges, and we hooked to the flash tank, and we're of course across the room. I'm at the controller just looking through things, and he goes, what's the pressure supposed to be? And I was like, well, it should be about 500. And he just shakes his head. I go, what's going on? He goes, I'm at 800. I go, there's no way you're at 800. And I go, it's almost impossible. Well, I got proved wrong there. So, we were running at 800 PSI in the flash tank. I was like, what in the world? So then I go full on like, okay, what's going on? So I get like, instead of just that relaxed, I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. But yeah, so we verified the pressures. I went back to the E2, verified what it was reading. It was right at set point, 500. So then, okay, so what tells it to be that? The pressure transducer. So then I start looking at the flash tank and figuring out where that pressure transducer was. And I found it, I isolated it, pulled it off. And as soon as I pulled it off, oil just came right out of it. I'm like, well, that's strange. Shake the oil out, throw it back in real quick, fire it back up. And all of a sudden you could just hear that rack go, just calmed right back down, verified the pressure. We're reading 500. E2 is reading 500. But that's just simple, the basics, making sure, because the controller only does what it's told to do. And if it's getting bad information in, it's going to send bad information out and tell it to do something bad. So what's really important is to understand that information is true coming back to that controller.
Yeah, and I've had so many conversations with lots of different control techs saying, and even technicians, like they see a lot of guys trying to troubleshoot from the main controller or remotely. You got to be on site. Like you can troubleshoot as best as possible from that controller and remotely and have a really good idea. But until you're at site, like that there, you wouldn't have been able to figure out remotely. Right. And like, why is I got every compressor running remotely, everything's running, but we're at temperature. That doesn't, you know what I mean? Like why is that possible? So this is where you got to use your gauges. You got to do proper checks. So awesome. I hopefully you guys all took something away. Andrew, really appreciate the time. Eric, I thank you so much for the input and the rest of the people here in the meetup. If you want to, learn more about the Refrigeration Mentor community, join some of these, go to refrigerationmentor.com/hub to really, get into the community, ask questions. Andrew's there all the time. Him and Aiden answering questions, putting videos up and pictures up, just really to support the technicians around the world, right? Because this is what we're here. We're a community to help each other. We want to uplift all of us. We're learning together. Like we've been doing this 20 years. And I'm still learning every day. Honestly, every day I'm learning something new, trying to learn about the landscape now. Like I talk about CO2 a lot, but man, there's a ton of different regulations changing with like A2Ls and R290 and different things happening out there. So we want to really keep you ahead of the game, keep you out there and just growing. That's the biggest thing, growing. Any final thoughts, Andrew?
Just invest in yourself. I mean, that's so important in your development for yourself. And so, keep pushing, keep grinding, and
love
learn.
it. Eric, any final thoughts, brother?
Same. Always keep sharp. And a good thing sometimes, when you go for a new startup somewhere and you feel comfortable about the system, try bring some of your sales guys or project managers, because they're also keen to learn, but they never get the chance to do it. Right. Yeah. So, but sometimes bring them along, because it will clear out a lot of questions for you.
Yeah. I like you bring that up, because I have so many contractors reaching out and say, can you train my sales guys? Can you teach them at least a few of the ins and outs, because they need to understand this stuff too. And that's why I tell everybody, like, when I see a technician going into a sales role, project manager role, or into some sort of role that's more on that sales side, I'm like, those guys are going to crush it, right? But they got to invest in the business acumen, and the sales side. And if they do that, those always, even at manufacturers, the top people that I see in a lot of manufacturers, they were technicians before. They understand the mechanical side, and then they learn the business side, or the sales and the project management. Because you can learn all this stuff that we know, we learned. It's not like we just we came onto the planet and we knew all this stuff. Before I started refrigeration, I think it was 24. I knew nothing. Didn't even know what an air conditioner was, because we didn't have one where I was from. So I didn't even know like that, or refrigeration. We had a fridge at least, but you know what I mean? Canada's cold all the time. Like, it's always snowing, and we go drive around on our ski-doos to get to different places. Anyway, hopefully guys, you enjoyed this. Always, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button if it's on Spotify or Apple, or reach out. info@refrigerationmentor.com. Head to the refrigerationmentor.com/hub if you want to learn more about the community. And thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.